The Texas sun blazed mercilessly over the dusty fields of Tyler, where two 10-year-old boys ran side by side, their laughter echoing across the empty lot behind White House Elementary. Patrick Mahomes and Marcus Thompson had been inseparable since second grade, bound by their shared love of football and dreams that seemed as vast as the Texas sky. "Come on, Pat, throw it harder," Marcus called out, his worn sneakers kicking up red dirt as he sprinted toward the makeshift end zone they'd marked with backpacks. Patrick gripped the scuffed football, his young arm already showing the promise that would one day make him famous. "You sure you can catch it?" he grinned, winding up for the throw. "Just throw it, quarterback." Marcus laughed, running his route with surprising precision for a kid who'd learned everything from watching games on his grandmother's old television. The ball spiraled through the humid air, landing perfectly in Marcus's outstretched hands. The two boys collided in celebration, tumbling into the grass with victory shouts that could be heard 3 blocks away. "We're gonna play in the NFL together, man," Marcus declared, sitting up and brushing dirt from his faded t-shirt. "You throwing, me catching, just like this?" Patrick nodded enthusiastically, his eyes bright with possibility. The Mahomes-Thompson connection sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Their friendship was the kind that only childhood can forge, pure, unconditional, and built on shared dreams rather than circumstances. While Patrick's father, Pat Mahomes Sr., was making his mark in Major League Baseball, Marcus lived with his grandmother in a small house on the other side of town. The economic differences never mattered to them. All that mattered was football, friendship, and the unshakable belief that they could conquer the world together. Every afternoon after school, they'd meet at their field. Every weekend, they'd watch games together, studying the quarterbacks and receivers, imagining themselves in those uniforms. Marcus's grandmother would make them sandwiches, and Patrick's mum would pick them both up for practice at the local youth league. "Promise me something," Marcus said one evening as they lay on their backs, staring at the emerging stars. "No matter how big we get, no matter where football takes us, we stick together. Deal?" "Deal," Patrick replied without hesitation, extending his fist. Their knuckles met in a bump that sealed more than just a promise. It sealed a bond they believed nothing could break. 3 years later, everything changed with the sound of a ringing phone at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. "Marcus, honey, wake up." His grandmother's voice was different, strained, broken. "I need to tell you something about your mama, the car." Accident had been instant, they said. His mother was driving back from her night shift at the diner when a drunk driver ran a red light. Marcus Thompson, at 13, was suddenly an orphan with a grandmother whose health was failing and whose small social security check could barely keep them afloat. Patrick found out at school when Marcus didn't show up for their usual lunch. Table meeting! When he finally tracked his friend down, he found him sitting alone behind the gymnasium, staring at nothing. "My mum's gone, Pat," Marcus whispered, his voice hollow. "Just gone." Patrick didn't know what to say. How do you comfort someone who's lost everything? He sat down beside his friend, and they stayed there in silence until the bell rang. In the weeks that followed, Marcus changed. The bright, laughing boy who caught every pass and dreamed of NFL glory seemed to disappear, replaced by someone angry. Distant and increasingly reckless, he started hanging around older kids who didn't care about football or futures. He began missing practice, then missing school altogether. "Marcus, come on, man," Patrick pleaded during one of their increasingly rare conversations. "Coach says if you miss another practice, you're off the team. We need you. I need you." "For what?" Marcus snapped, his eyes flashing with pain disguised as anger. "So I can pretend everything's fine, so I can keep living in this fantasy where everything works out." "Wake up, Pat. This isn't some movie. Some of us don't get happy endings." The gulf between them widened with each passing day. Patrick's star continued to rise, his arm strength improving, his accuracy becoming legendary among local coaches. College scouts were already whispering his name. Meanwhile, Marcus was falling deeper into a world that Patrick couldn't understand or reach. The final break came during their sophomore year of high school. Patrick had just thrown for 400 yards in a playoff game when he spotted Marcus in the parking lot, clearly under the influence of something stronger than teenage rebellion. "Marcus, what are you doing to yourself?" Patrick confronted him, still. In his grass-stained uniform. "I'm surviving," Marcus shot back.
"Something you wouldn't understand with your perfect life and your perfect future?" "My life isn't perfect. I want you there with me, man. We had plans." "Plans change, golden boy. Some of us don't get to escape." Those were the last words they
spoke for over a decade. Patrick went on to Texas Tech, then to the NFL draft, then to Super Bowl glory. Marcus disappeared into a world of poor choices, missed opportunities, and gradual descent that would take him far from the dreams they once
shared on that dusty field in Tyler.
10 years later, Patrick Mahomes stood under the bright lights of Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, hoisting the Lombardi Trophy above his head as confetti rained down like snow. The roar of 70,000 fans seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth, but in that moment of ultimate triumph, his mind wandered to a dusty field in Tyler and a promise made between two boys who thought they'd conquer the world together. Pat, how does it feel to be Super Bowl champion?" The reporters crowded around him, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. "It feels incredible," Patrick smiled, his natural charisma shining through his exhaustion. "This is what we dreamed about, what we worked for. I'm just grateful to be here with this amazing team." But even as he spoke the expected words, part of him wondered where Marcus was, whether he was watching, whether he even cared. The thought was quickly pushed aside by another wave of celebration, another interview, another responsibility that came with being the face of the NFL. Meanwhile, 300 miles away in a homeless shelter in downtown Kansas City, Marcus Thompson watched the game on a small television mounted high on the wall. His once athletic frame was now gaunt, marked by years of struggle and poor decisions. His hands shook slightly, not from excitement, but from withdrawal from the substances. That had become his escape from a reality too painful to face sober. "That's my boy," he whispered to no one in particular, his voice barely audible over the cheers from other residents watching the game. "We did it, Pat. We actually did it." But even as he said the words, Marcus knew the "we" was a lie. While Patrick had risen to the pinnacle of athletic achievement, Marcus had fallen through every safety net life had offered. After his grandmother's death during his senior year, he'd aged out of the foster system with no family, no support, and no direction. A series of minimum wage jobs led to periods of unemployment, which led to eviction, which led to the streets. These drugs had started as a way to numb the pain of losing everything. They became a way to forget the dreams he'd abandoned, the friend he'd pushed away, the life he might have lived if circumstances had been different. Each hit promised relief from the weight of his failures, but each one also pushed him further from any chance of redemption. He'd been clean for 3 months now, thanks to the shelters program, but every day was a battle. Every day he had to choose between the temporary escape of substances and the harder path of rebuilding a life that felt irreparably broken. On the television screen, Patrick was interviewed, his smile radiant, his future limitless. "I couldn't
have done this without my family, my teammates, my coaches," he was saying. Everyone who believed in me when I was just a kid from Tyler with big dreams.
Marcus touched the small scar above his left eyebrow, a reminder of the day he and Patrick had crashed their bikes racing to the convenience store for sodas. They'd both ended up scraped and bleeding, but laughing so hard they could barely breathe. The memory felt like it belonged to someone else, some other version of himself that had died, along with his mother, on that rainy Tuesday morning so many years ago. As the celebration continued on screen, Marcus quietly stood up and walked to his assigned bunk. Tomorrow he had a job interview at a construction company. It wasn't much, but it was a step. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running from the boy he used to be and start building toward the man he could still become. He pulled out a worn piece of paper from his wallet, a newspaper clipping from their high school days showing him and Patrick after a big win, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. The headline read, "Dynamic Duo Leads Tyler to Victory." He'd carried it through every low point, every mistake, every moment when he'd wanted to give up entirely. "Congratulations, brother," he whispered to the photo. "You earned it." 6 months after the Super Bowl victory, Patrick was in Kansas City for a charity event at the downtown community center. The summer heat was oppressive, even for someone who'd grown up in Texas, and he found himself walking the few blocks from his hotel rather than taking a car, wanting a few minutes to think before facing another crowd of admirers and well-wishers. The charity event had been his idea, a program to provide sports equipment and coaching to underprivileged kids in
the inner city.
Success had brought many blessings, but it had also brought a sense of responsibility that sometimes felt overwhelming. Every appearance, every dollar donated, every young life potentially changed, it all mattered more than any touchdown he'd ever thrown. As he turned the corner onto Main Street, something caught his eye. Across the street, sitting on the steps of a closed storefront, was a figure that made him stop mid-stride. The build was familiar, the way the shoulders slumped.
Even the gesture of running hands through hair when frustrated. It all triggered a memory so strong it nearly knocked him backward.
"It can't be," he whispered to himself, squinting across the busy street. The man looked up at that moment, and their eyes met across 4 lanes of traffic and more than a decade of silence. Time seemed to freeze as recognition dawned on both faces simultaneously. Marcus Thompson looked nothing like the vibrant teenager Patrick remembered. His clothes were clean but clearly second-hand, his face weathered by experiences Patrick could only imagine. But the eyes, those were unmistakably the same eyes that had lit up when catching passes on their makeshift field in Tyler. Without thinking, Patrick stepped into the street, dodging cars and ignoring the honking horns and shouted warnings. All that mattered was crossing the distance that had somehow grown between 2 boys who had once been inseparable. "Marcus!" The name came out as barely more than a breath. Marcus stood slowly, his movements uncertain, as if he might bolt at any moment. "Hey, Pat." They stood there for a long moment, 2 men shaped by vastly different paths but connected by a bond that had somehow survived years of separation and silence. Patrick noticed the small scar above Marcus's eyebrow, the same one from their childhood bike crash. And suddenly they were 10 years old again, planning to conquer the world together. "What are you doing here?" Patrick asked, his voice gentle, careful not to make assumptions about Marcus's circumstances. "I live here now," Marcus replied simply. "Have for about 2 years. Been getting my life together." The words hung in the air, loaded with implications that neither man wanted to address directly. Patrick noticed the ID bracelet on Marcus's
wrist. the kind they gave residents at transitional housing facilities. He noticed the way Marcus's clothes hung loose on a frame that had once been powerfully built. He noticed, and he understood without needing details. "I saw the Super Bowl,"
Marcus said quietly. "You looked good out there, real good." "Thanks," Patrick replied, then paused. "Marcus, Don't," Marcus interrupted, holding up a hand. "Don't apologize or explain or any of that. You did what you were supposed to do. You followed the dream we talked about. I'm glad one of us made it." The pain in those words was unmistakable, but so was something else. A genuine happiness for his old friend's success, untainted by bitterness or jealousy. "What are you doing right now?" Patrick
asked suddenly. "Do you have somewhere you need to be?"
Marcus glanced around, taking in the busy street, the people hurrying past without a second glance. "Not really. Why?" "There's somewhere I need to be, but I could use some company." "You interested in helping me give away some football equipment to kids who probably love the game as much as we used to?" For the first time since they'd recognized each other, Marcus smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and reminded Patrick of the boy who used to celebrate every completed pass, like it was a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
"Yeah," Marcus said, his voice stronger now. "I'd like that." As they walked toward the community center together, Patrick felt something shift in his chest, a piece of himself that had been missing for years, suddenly clicking back into place.
Success had brought him many things, but it had never brought him peace about the friend he'd lost. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to find out what redemption could look like for both of them. 3 hours later, Patrick and Marcus sat in a quiet corner of the community center, watching as kids from the neighborhood played with the new equipment Patrick had donated. The afternoon had been magical, seeing Marcus interact with the children, his natural coaching instincts emerging as he showed them proper catching techniques and encouraged the shy ones to get involved. "You're good with them," Patrick observed, watching Marcus patiently work with a young boy who kept dropping passes. "Kids don't judge," Marcus replied simply. "They just want someone to believe in them." There was a deeper conversation happening. Beneath their words, years of unspoken hurt and regret finally finding a way to surface. "Marcus, I need to tell you something," Patrick said finally. "Not a day went by that I didn't think about you. Wonder where you were, how you were doing. I tried to find you a few times, especially after I got drafted." Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching the kids play. "I wasn't ready to be found then, wasn't ready to face any of this. And now I'm trying to figure out who I am without
All the stuff that's been drowning me for the past decade. It's hard, man. Harder than any football practice we ever had." Patrick nodded, understanding more than Marcus might have expected. Success isn't easy either. Different problems, but
still problems. Some nights I lie awake thinking about all the people I've lost touch with, all the relationships that got sacrificed for the dream. You were the biggest loss. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Marcus spoke again. "I'm proud of you, you know, really proud. You became everything we dreamed about and more." "We both had the same dream," Patrick replied. "Just because mine happened on a football field doesn't mean yours can't happen somewhere
else. I'm 32 years old, Pat. I've got a record, no real skills, no education past high school. Not exactly prime candidate material for anything." Patrick turned to face his old friend directly. "You know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who survived things that would have broken most people. I see someone who's fighting every day to rebuild their life from scratch."
I see the same heart that used to catch every pass I threw and tell me we were going to conquer the world together. He paused, pulling out his phone. I've got an idea. My foundation is expanding next year. We're opening a youth center in Tyler.
Giving kids from tough situations a place to go, people to talk to, opportunities they might not get otherwise. I need someone to run it who understands what it's like to face impossible odds. Marcus stared at him in disbelief. Pat, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You'd have to complete some training programs, get certified in youth counseling, probably take some business classes.
It wouldn't be easy and it wouldn't happen overnight. But Marcus, who better to reach these kids than someone who's been where they are? Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes for the first time since he was 13 years old. Why would you do this?
After everything, after I pushed you away, after all these years? Because you're my brother, Patrick said simply. Because that promise we made under the stars in Tyler wasn't just about football. It was about never giving up on each other.
I may have won a Super Bowl, but I never kept that promise. I'm trying to keep it now. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, his voice breaking slightly. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You survived this long, Patrick replied. That tells me you're stronger than you think. Besides, you won't be doing it alone. The Mahomes Thompson connection, remember? Just in a different arena this time. 6 months later, Marcus Thompson stood in front of the newly opened Mahomes Youth Center in Tyler, Texas, wearing a staff polo shirt and holding the keys to a facility that would serve dozens of at-risk kids every week. His hands were steady now, his eyes clear, his purpose defined. Patrick stood beside him at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, both men grinning as they had that day so many years ago when they dreamed of conquering the world together. Ready, partner? Patrick asked, holding one end of the scissors. Ready? Marcus replied, his voice full of hope for the first time in decades. As the ribbon fell away and the crowd cheered, 2 boys from Tyler, now men shaped by different struggles but united by unbreakable friendship, stepped forward. Into a future that looked nothing like their original dreams, but somehow felt exactly right. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won on football fields or in stadiums filled with cheering crowds. Sometimes they're won in quiet moments of redemption, in second chances, and in friendships that refuse to stay buried no matter how much time passes or how far apart life pulls you. The Mahomes-Thompson connection was back, and this time they
really were going to change the world, one kid at a time.